These two guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
And it's a Feedback Friday on Mackey and Judd, where we just devote most of the show to your comments, your questions, your critiques, your theories on life and the Vikings. It's mostly Viking stuff this week. And then we'll get to Judd's. You thought Judd's Keys doesn't take a week off.
Well, he actually was going to. And then I got a note late last night. And then I had to call Keys, who was vacationing in Mexico.
Oh, no.
I had to call him. He was very upset. He's like, I'll get you Keys, but it's going to cost you. I don't know yet what it's going to cost.
Oh, no. I feel like we need to rework Keys' contract. Just because the Vikings are on a bye. No, it's Judd's keys to Vikings success after the bye. And then next week, it's Judd's keys to a win specifically over the Cowboys. And
correct.
Maybe Keys' agent didn't fill him in on, the extra week of work here.
I don't know what happened, but he was very upset. Okay. And very drunk, not surprisingly.
So we'll get to Judd's keys later on. Mackey and Judd, daily Minnesota sports entertainment. Our guy Ross Brendel is filling in for the vacationing Declan Goff at executive producer. And let's get right to the feedback on this Friday. You can always send us messages via social media or the Score North or Purple Daily YouTube channels. The best way to get on Feedback Friday is to send us a note via the Score North app. There's a feedback link at the bottom of the Score North app. That's a central hub for everything we do, the Score North app. It's all of our podcasts. It's all of our YouTube videos, all of Judd's written work. Jay Greenleaf writes in, I don't think it gets enough credit that the Vikings lead the NFL in sacks, hurries, pressures, and pressure percentage. When it comes to quarterback hurries and pressures, there's a grand canyon between the Vikings and the number 2 Pittsburgh Steelers. And he's right about all those things. The Vikings were one of the worst teams in the NFL getting pressure last year. And now they're the best team through the first 6 games. So I'll take his comment and ask a question. Are we not giving enough credit to the Vikings defense based on these sack, pressure, and hurry numbers turning around 180 degrees this season?
In that one specific area, yes, that is true. And the return of Hunter is huge. Griffin, who I thought would come back and be okay at best, has been, especially situationally, really good. So yes, I would say it's a credit. It's a credit to the Vikings, and it's also, here's why I think we're not giving them as much credit as people think that they deserve. I think the natural return of a guy like Hunter is so huge that we're also like, oh yeah, of course, like Danielle Hunter's back. It's gonna, but yeah, that is one category and statistic, and it's obvious from the eye test as well that has changed greatly. I think what's sort of also holding us back from going a little bit more crazy in a positive way about that is the run defense has not been as good as we expected. And in my mind, those things sort of weigh against each other. But when it comes to the fact that I believe they are at 21 sacks, which I think is tied for the league lead.
I think it leads outright, actually.
So at 21 sacks, they are 2 sacks away from their 2020 16-game total. So yeah, it has been a breath of fresh air to see the pressures and the sacks, and that has been huge. So I think it's fair to say that at the bye we should probably stop, observe that, and appreciate the fact that with at least one key guy back and now a line that also can apply pressure, what a difference that makes. And in fairness, Phil, that certainly also makes a difference in coverage too. So like if a quarterback could sit back there all day long, if it's possible, up until the last 2 games or so, Breeland's worse. Pat Pease played great until he got hurt. But again, if a quarterback can get back in the pocket and sit back there like they did last season, Pat Pease probably not as good. So it is a game changer defensively. And I think a credit to what this team has done from that end, that the return of Hunter and Griffin coming back has made an enormous difference in how bleeping bad the pressure was last season.
So you were right. They are tied for the league lead in sacks with the Bears at 21. But here's the crazy thing. So It's one thing, like, obviously you want to get home and get that sack, but you also just want to throw quarterbacks off their spot and pressure them and get them uncomfortable.
Yep.
So the Bears and the Vikings are tied with 21 sacks. But in terms of pressures, the Vikings have 75 pressures already this season. The Bears have only 46.
Really? Interesting.
And in terms of hurries, this is separate from sacks, the Vikings have 46 hurries and the Bears have 14. So the Bears are getting home at a ridiculously higher rate, but they're not getting the pressures that the Vikings are getting. So in terms of percentage, the Vikings are pressuring 32% of snaps. The second place team is the Steelers at 28%. And again, the Vikings were like bottom of the barrel in these last year because Danielle Hunter didn't play, Michael Pierce wasn't out there. I mean, they're just playing backups along the defensive line. So on the flip side, the Vikings are giving up the fourth most yards per attempt in the running game. So if they can even get back to like middle of the pack run defense, and maybe a lot of it's missed tackles, like that's another thing. I think the Vikings, let me find this too. The Vikings are among the league leaders in missed tackles. It's been better the last few weeks, but they're definitely, they've had 40 missed tackles already this year, which is, it's like fringe bottom 10. So, but if that running defense can kind of come back to mid-pack and you can keep pressuring quarterbacks, then this will be a top 10 defense at the end of the year in a lot of different overall categories. And just one more for you here since we're going down the stat rabbit hole. Yards per play allowed, the Vikings are smack dab 16th, right in the middle. 5.5 yards per play allowed. So they got to be better overall. It's not because of lack of pressure, but there's a lot of other leaky things within that defense that are preventing it from overall being as great as it could be. Also, like late in games, late in halves, like the game's not over when like the 2-minute warning hits. So
yes.
All right, here. Michael Wilson via the Score North app says, big fan. I love the content. I'm a diehard Minnesota sports fan. I watch everything you guys do on YouTube. And now I've downloaded the Score North app. Appreciate the great work. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's very nice.
The kind words. Jeff Dixon via the Score North app says, love the Kirk Cousins nicknames. A couple more for you to add. The omniscient, is it omniscient? Omniscient. The omniscient oligarch of overtime.
Okay, that's way out of my pay grade right there, man.
I think that's it's a little wordy.
That's a lot.
But how about this one? The 2-minute Terminator.
Now that is solid.
I'll be back.
Can you just shorten that to 2-minute Terminator? Take out the
2-minute Terminator. Yeah.
Yeah. But okay. I don't mind the.
The 2-minute Terminator. One. I like that. We're gonna add 2-minute Terminator to the list here.
I'll be back with 2 minutes left.
Michael DeLazar via the Score North app says, do you think Kirk Cousins is playing better because the offensive line has been better, or is the offensive line better because Kirk is getting rid of the ball quicker?
I think it's a combination. One is I think there is. I'm not going to sit here, as people might expect, and say, oh, no, the offensive line's been great, and that's why Kirk's good, and just wait, Kirk sucks. I'm not going to do that. That's not fair. Kirk Cousins is playing really, really well. I think it's a combination. Again, I'll say this. On Sunday against the Panthers, I liked the tackles. I thought the tackles were damn good, right? Udo had a tough game, but I didn't hate the guards. And I think Cleveland is slowly but surely probably at left guard coming along, far from perfect. But I think that there is definitely something there. The center scares me. So, yes, do I think that Kirk has benefited from the line? I think they've had 2 bad games. But besides that, have been solid. Do I think that Kirk has benefited from that? Absolutely. But there is no question the delivery of the football to me is huge. And that's a Kirk thing. That is not the line thing. Because he held on to the ball way too long last year with a line that had Dakota Dozier on it and Drew Samia for some time. So no, I am not going to take the bait of this question, which wants me to question Kirk Cousins. I'm not going to do it during the bye week. I'm giving Kirk credit.
Yeah, I mean, I think we threw the number out on the State of the Offense episode of Purple Daily yesterday that in terms of self-induced pressures, he had 27 of them last year, full season. He only has 2 so far this year. That's when you take away the offensive line, and it's just him holding onto the ball too long or him, maybe moving his way into a sack or something. He's been much better about, and the numbers bear it too. He's getting the ball out more quickly. I think where the offensive line has absolutely helped him is when the pocket is clean, he's excellent. And he's been that way throughout his entire career. And again, this year, he's been pressured on 29% of snaps. Last year, 39% of snaps.
There you go.
So that's an extra, for every 10 times he drops back, he's got a clean pocket, an extra 1 out of 10 times. So an extra maybe handful of times per game, small handful of times per game. And that might be the difference between the KJ Osborne touchdown and not. So he's getting help more than he was last year, but he's also better in situations that he wasn't as good in last year. And so all of those things equal the start that you've seen so far.
And where it's a little bit difficult to parse that apart is obviously the delivery of the football quicker now helps the pocket stay clean.
Mm-hmm.
Because like if you sit back there, they're going to ding the line and say, well, the pocket collapsed. It wasn't clean.
Yes.
So I think it's a combination of the two things that definitely go hand in hand. But that question was trying to get us to turn on Kirk, and that doesn't happen on Mackey and Judd.
There's also just we've been supporters
just not
since day one.
We are behind the Cousins family.
Quit trying to tear this thing apart.
Exactly right. Don't come into our house. You're not going to do that. Do you know what we are doing right now? We're tuning out the noise from the outside. We can't control it.
That's right. Yeah. All we can do is just, one good show at a time and support Kirk all the way. I think people have a misperception, though, about offensive lines. I like just listening to Vikings fans throughout the last few years. A lot of people are just like, well, what's he supposed to do? Like every time there's pressure, it's like, well, this is the NFL, okay? It almost feels like sometimes people do not watch Red Zone Channel or not watch the other games. Like if you're only watching Vikings games, you wouldn't have any context for what like other teams look like getting pressured.
Absolutely.
But so far this season, all right, like there's some rookie quarterbacks that are having like the Jets and the Bears offensive line is kind of a disaster. So I'm gonna take Zach Wilson, Justin Fields sort of out of the discussion. Russell Wilson has gotten pressured before the injury on 40% of dropbacks this year. Josh Allen in Buffalo has gotten pressured on 37% of dropbacks this year. So, like, there's a lot of really good quarterbacks that have it way worse than Cousins when it comes to pressure.
Right.
But people act like, well, what the Vikings offensive line is such a sieve, what's he supposed to do? It's like, that's not, even last year, that wasn't as true as people made it out. The offensive line was bad, but he still was clean much more often than he was pressured.
And this is where the discussion that surround these stats gets to be a little bit confusing at times too, because as we've discussed on previous shows, Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, that whole group induces pressure on purpose at times. Like they will hold on to the ball
or go or move out to the left.
Kyler, right? Like those guys will. And so some of these guys are playing the game at such a high level that they will actually, in my opinion, at times bring the pressure on purposely because the pressure means guys come open.
Yep, like Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson, a lot of these mobile quarterbacks, Josh Allen, they might evade initial pressure by moving out of the pocket, and then they will wait, and then pressure comes again. And it's like that. Sometimes that second wave of pressure gets counted as pressure.
Right. Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
When Kirk Cousins would never reach that second wave of pressure because he's not going to move out of the pocket.
And nor should he.
Yeah.
We wouldn't encourage the second wave of pressure on Kirk Cousins.
Yeah. But overall, offensive line has been better and Kirk has been better. And so the correct answer, as Judd said, is a combination of both things. Our next question here or comment on Feedback Friday presented by our friends. Speaking of risk management and protection, Federated. Federated's been the offensive line, so to speak, for business owners in the state of Minnesota for over 100 years. They're based in Owatonna. They're one of us. They've been supporters of Minnesota sports teams like the Gophers So check them out, federatedinsurance.com, if you want to find a full list of industries they protect and all the resources and tools and people that can help your business and help protect your bottom line and your employees. And remember, at Federated, it's our business to protect yours. Matt from St. Paul via the Score North app says, let them say you're doing a 180 on Kirk. Who cares? Kirk has done a 180 on us, and that's the truth. His play has been bipolar, not our opinions. I agree. Like, there's very clear evidence that he's been different and better in situations than previous years. Here's a question off Matt's statement. How sustainable is this? He's 33. A lot of quarterbacks, like this is his 7th year as a full-time starter. A lot of quarterbacks, after 6, 7, 8 years, like they do reach a new level because they've seen so many snaps at this point. Do you think Kirk has reached a new sustainable level as a quarterback, or do you think we're seeing a patented 6, 7 week hot stretch?
I am going to, again, somebody else trying to get me to turn on Kirk. Just as quickly as I've said he's playing well, I get all of these people who are very smart. They're cagey. They're savvy because they're coming in and it's like a backdoor play of, okay, do you think Kirk can keep this up? Because they want me to say no. I don't think you can tell yet. Like, in fairness, I am seeing things that I feel like, and I might be wrong, but it feels to me from the eye test like I'm seeing certain things from him that we, well, for sure, to say this with certainty, there are certain things that we are seeing that he has not done since arriving here in 2018. There are. He did not lead late game drives with such ease and looking so competent. To go back to your stat, Phil, in the first 2 years here, he led one. That was against the Broncos, right?
Mm-hmm.
The comeback. And that was and to me, that's always been the Stephon Diggs game. Diggs is the one who went crazy that day.
Like, people talk about that game like, but what about that Broncos game? Almost like
that was a bad Broncos
like Patriots
game.
fans talk about like Super Bowl wins or something.
That was a bad opponent, and 2, it was Stephon Diggs who basically said we are not going to lose. So, but I have to wait and see because we have seen Kirk. This is not like Kirk has never had, to your point just previously, it's not like Kirk has never gone through a period of playing like, oh my God, he's playing great. He's playing really well. I'm seeing things that are very encouraging, but I am unwilling to take the bait on this question again, which is trying to get me to say something negative about number 8. And I think it's fair to say, let's wait and see.
Okay. Is who's out there? Is that Stella?
Yeah, it was Stella. Stella, would you quit? She's purposely shaking to get attention. This is unbelievable. This is a dog who wants attention now. I put her up on her favorite place. She was on her bed. She was happy. She gets down. She walks right outside my door and shakes because she knows that chain will make noise.
She's also smart enough, Judd, to know that it's Keys Day, so she's trying to mimic Keys. I think
I like what that's very good, Roscoe.
That could be what it was.
I liken her more. She's sort of a combination between Moss and Percy. Just needy. Yeah,
I was going to say the same
like
thing.
Like a star dog. Don't get me wrong. She's a star dog, but she's needy. She always wants attention. She wants a new contract. So I am actually going to slide back here and close my door fully. So the next time she pulls this stunt, it's going to be more difficult.
Oh, boy.
Also, Phil, on-air ratting on Judd yesterday before Purple Access, this is all you heard. Stella, quit chewing on cords. Stella, get away from the cord, Stella.
Yeah, easy Marlon Brando.
She was Stella. Stella. Yeah, no, she came in and got involved. It's hilarious how she's like, I want attention now. It's like, do you not realize Daddy is making money?
Daddy's paying the bills right now.
Daddy's paying the bills.
Daddy's making sure that you've got some kibbles and bits.
Do you want that
for
top
dinner tonight?
She likes the good stuff. I'm going to tell you that right now. She likes the good stuff, and the good stuff ain't cheap. If you want the good stuff, you'll let Daddy work. Let Daddy cook.
Let Judd cook. So, okay, I want to bring one more Kirk thing to the table here because in the spirit of a quarterback reaching a new level after like 6 or 7 years, I think the most frequent comparison I get from the Kirk stands is Drew Brees. Because they look and they say, well, Drew Brees was a 500 quarterback for his first 7 years as a starter.
Okay.
Or so. And then all of a sudden, like, in his early 30s, things start to click. Then he wins the championship in 2009 and starts to get some weapons and whatever. Now, he also had one of the great offensive coaches in NFL history in Sean Payton, who's still in New Orleans. But Drew Brees' first 6-7 years as a starter, his first 7, he was 55 and 51, so right around 500. Kirk Cousins so far, exactly 500, 54 and 2. They're both like big completion percentage guys. Drew Brees used to throw more interceptions. This is also the early 2000s when the game was different. But I've always said, first of all, you can't just say, well, this guy was this for a few years, and it's the same as my guy that's underperforming, and then he took off, so therefore this guy's going to take off. That's not how it works. You can't just say, well, this guy was a Hall of Famer, and look at the first 8 years of his career. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to be a Hall of Famer that starts the same way. But is that like Drew Brees got to a new level in his early 30s? Oh, it's interesting.
It is, but it's going to go back to what we discussed a few weeks back. And this is the Kirk I'd love to see. Tricked up Kirk with a McVay or a coach like Kyle Shanahan and Kirk. If Kirk could have been patient, and more importantly, the Niners, right? That's the Kirk, because your last point about Breeze and him gaining steam is the best point. Sean Payton. Like Sean Payton, I don't like him personally. I think he's a jerk. But as far as his ability to coach quarterbacks and to be an offensive guru, I would really be curious. Like if we were to talk about, okay, Kirk has turned a corner officially, and like it's full time now. It's not 8 games. It's not 10 games. It is Kirk Cousins is a new man. Wouldn't you be curious to see him with a coach? Because right now, he's got a coach who tolerates him and meets with him once a week. Like it's okay, we'll meet once a week. It's literally counseling. Yeah. Like it's marriage counseling. You're going once a week. What if he got embraced and had a coach who was behind him, and more importantly, just was really good offensively? That's the Kirk that I would like to see, and that's the Kirk that I think would have an opportunity. I am in no way saying that it would for sure happen. But if we were to have like the Breeze conversation, that's the Kirk that I think would have the best chance of going to that and staying there.
Yep. I'm fully willing to say that if he gets partnered with the right offensive coach, there is another sustainable level to his game. And if he wants to play into his late 30s, there's no reason why he can't. I mean, Tom Brady's in his mid 40s. Matt Ryan's in his late 30s playing at a high level. Ben Roethlisberger is still standing up at age almost 40, right? Like, you can play into your late. He's going to have, if he wants to play another 6 years, he can, and it doesn't have to be all with Mike Zimmer. So I'm curious to see what that next evolution is, whether it's with the Vikings or somebody else.
Question for you. Matthew Stafford and Kirk, how close do you think that they are in terms of abilities? They've got different, I mean, I'm not saying that they're the same quarterback, but how close do you think that they are in terms of being just good players?
I think Stafford, I think Cousins is more accurate.
Okay.
Overall, but I think Stafford is better when things are muddy. I think Stafford's better when his team is trailing late. I think Stafford has a little bit more like go with the flow. Kirk needs things very particular. Kirk's getting a little better in that regard this season. And the numbers even bear it out. Like literally when facing pressure, when the opposing defense is getting past your offensive line, Stafford is leading the NFL this year in yards per attempt. So he's welcoming pressure and blitzing, and Kirk Cousins still really struggles in those situations. So I think if it's who do I want when the game's on the line late, I'm trailing, and the defense is getting after my offense, Stafford's better in those situations.
Okay, question for you again. How good was Stafford in those predicaments last year? Because I guess what I'm getting at is Stafford has one of the best offensive minds now coaching him. And like that's the comp of what if you transplanted Kirk to McVay? I just feel like a coach. He was
still. I just wanted to make sure to verify this statistically. He was the second best quarterback in the league, yards per attempt under pressure last year.
Okay, so he's just good.
He's really good. He's way better than people think he is.
Because that's my question, though, about QBs like this. If you get them to the right person who really cares and like is really good and is in some ways a partner, what does that do? Because that to me would be the next official step for Kirk.
There's also a reason why it wasn't Stafford the number 1 overall pick back in the day.
Yes. Yep.
Like 12 years ago.
From Georgia, right?
Like there's a reason why he was the number 1 overall pick and Kirk went in the middle rounds.
Absolutely, yeah. Yep.
So just like physical
and
traits and everything.
Credit to Kirk, where Kirk has come from, to who Kirk is. I'm celebrating Kirk today.
I mean, Tom Brady is the ultimate example of like going above and beyond your draft position.
Yep.
He's the greatest quarterback of all time. He was a 6th-round draft pick.
Yep.
Tony Romo was undrafted, became a borderline Hall of Famer.
Yep.
But Kirk is probably like modern era, let's say last 30 years of NFL football, last 30, 40 years, in terms of outperforming your draft position.
Yep.
Dude, he's probably top 10, maybe top 5.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson,
hell.
Dak Prescott in there too.
Yeah. Those guys
Russell
are definitely
Wilson
in the
is for
conversation.
sure.
I mean, Russ got a Super Bowl.
But RG3 was what? The 2nd pick in that draft?
Mm-hmm.
And Washington gave up a boatload, and Kirk's the guy.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to say this. The one thing is, let's all be careful, because as we praise Kirk, let's remember Kirk Cousins is absolutely at his best when he has the negative going against him. When Kirk Cousins has the chip on the shoulder, and I think it's a recent chip, so I think it needs to be re-emphasized. I honestly think that part of the reason that Kirk has thrived out of the gate in 2021 is because he had an immediate chip. Because I've always contended Kirktober is all of us, including the team, saying, "Are you really that good?" And he's like, "I'll show you I'm good." So let's keep the chip. Let's keep the chip. I am now praising him. Somebody else pick up the mantle from Mackey and Judd and rip him, because that's how you keep him going.
Brian Simmons via the Score North app. This is just a rant here. I don't even know if there's any punctuation here. I'm just going to. All right. They have 2 weeks to fix this, allowing subpar opposing offenses to hang around and raise hell at the end of games. Zimmer, you, because you are in charge, have bleeped the bed with this. Actually, some great punctuation here. All the commas were in the right spots there. So sorry to doubt your grammar, Brian. I'm going to read that again. Zimmer, you, because you are in charge, have bleeped the bed with this. Chicken bleep mentality. The great teams put their collective boot on opponents' throats and put them out of their misery. Detroit, Carolina, Cincinnati all should have been crushed. End rant. Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. You should never have been trailing at the end of that Lions game. Mike Zimmer often coaches conservatively when his team takes a lead. He coaches conservatively all the time regardless. And it's like, dude, if you were to be a little more aggressive in your philosophy, and then the people who are like, well, he's not calling offensive plays, he runs the company. Like he can.
Is that what people are saying now?
I've heard that defense a few times. Well, he's not the one calling plays. Okay,
It's
so
his team.
you're saying that like the senior vice president who hires a director, that guy's not accountable for like strategy beneath him? I mean, that's ridiculous. No, he's not calling offensive plays, but if he wants something more aggressive or something more conservative or go for it inside the 5-yard line on 4th and down instead of kicking a field goal, that's his final call. So I'd just like to see them stop being so afraid of bad things happening and be more open to being aggressive. Because if you take a 10-point lead or a 20-point lead, the earlier the better. Your defense is going to be better for it, right? Then the opposing team has to pass. It's like, come on, man.
Yes.
So I agree with Brian here. Totally.
I like it.
And then Garrett Wright via the Score North app says, all right, check this out, fellas. This is a little bit of
Reckless speculation.
We trade Garrett Bradbury and a late-round pick to Philly for Jason Kelce. He's a 34-year-old franchise center. There are ways to make it work cap-wise. Going into the bye week now so we can get him acclimated. Bradbury just can't be counted on, and improving our interior is an absolute must if we feel like we can go anywhere this year. A proven center would also help our young guards grow, not to mention give Kirk more confidence. Thoughts? So what are your thoughts on trading for Jason Kelce?
What? I love Kelce. He's great, and he is a great quote. But are you telling me Philadelphia would want Garrett Bradbury?
That's the flaw, right? That's
okay.
the
First of all,
you can't just trade your junk to somebody.
If you watch us, listen, participate, I love it. Okay, so I never want to come off as, but like I love you, and here's a surly furious on me to you, but come on, no one's taking Garrett Bradbury. Like Garrett Bradbury, unfortunately, and I'll preface this by saying I'm sure he's a great guy. Okay, great son. If he's married, great husband, but Garrett Bradbury positionally is the guy who my neighbor puts outside the door on the curb and says, "Take it, it's free." Like that, Jason Kelsey, you're going to work a trade.
Okay, well, I think you're getting too hung up on the Bradbury part of this. Okay, he's asking, would you look to trade for Jason Kelsey?
I would look to get a center, yes, but and also, does Mason Cole just stink? Like at some point in time.
I don't think they're ready. I think Bradbury has been just good enough for them to keep trying. I got to think that if Bradbury continues, I mean, he's given up the most pressures again of any center in the NFL. No center has given up more pressures than he has the last 3 years.
Yep.
How much more time does he get before you just try something else?
I think Kelsey is the heart and soul of that line, so I don't think that they're going to trade him.
He's 34, so I mean,
right. But if they do, I think it would cost more than you would probably give up. But if you're asking if I'm looking to move on from Garrett Bradbury, absolutely, as soon as possible.
I guess what I would rather do. I don't think Philadelphia is going to. I don't think Philadelphia is waving the white flag on their season yet necessarily. And you don't see trades like that very often mid-season in the NFL. And I haven't looked at a free agent list yet of centers that might be more like in their prime. I mean, Corey Linsley was available in free agency last year. He signed with the Chargers. He's the best center in the NFL.
Yeah, they couldn't afford.
So, like, guys like that can be available if you have the cap space and if you have the open-mindedness to move off a whiffed first-round draft pick.
Right.
And then you Vike that on Twitter via the Score North app. Fire extend year to year. Wolves, Wild, Vikings.
I'm firing the Vikings. I'm going.
Wow.
I'm going year to year on the Wolves, and I am going to extend the Wild because we are in the state of hockey. No, extend the Wild year to year on the Wolves, firing the Vikings.
I'm obviously extending the Wolves because
Of course you are.
I'm a masochist. I think I'm with you. I'm going year to year on the Wild, and I'm just going to put the Vikings in timeout here. I'm going to put the Vikings in timeout. I'm going to fire the Vikings here.
It bothers me that 6 games in, I have no idea what to make of the Vikings.
It kind of excites me because it's like we get to open a package on Sunday Night Football.
Oh,
against Dallas.
no, but I'm saying for this exercise, it bothers me.
Okay.
Like, I feel like I know more, and this is frightening to say. I feel like I know more about the Wolves right now than I do the Vikings.
You're going to know a little more about the Vikings in Purple Props this weekend on Purple Daily. I've got some really interesting. We're going to get into a couple sort of bigger picture subjects, and I've got some interesting stuff for you. Yeah, but there's also like here's the double tease for Purple Daily this weekend.
Educated
Is that there's some numbers out there, like there's some entities that rank teams, and your first reaction is going to be like, oh, okay, but that's the trap.